Hi, I'm Rapoport, and thanks for joining me on what could be the greatest day of my life. I have before me every teenage boy's dream, a brand new Porsche 911 Carrera S. My assignment is to drive it as hard as I can over the next couple of hours, and I'm going to get paid to do it. I can't wait to drive this thing, so a quick rundown of what's new for 2012, a total redesign with larger exterior dimensions and a corresponding increase in interior room, an electric steering unit to replace the old hydraulic one, and a considerable bump in performance across the board. There are 18 versions of Porsche's iconic rear-engine sports car. The new Carrera and this Carrera S are already here in both coupe and convertible versions. The other 14 variations are still on the previous generation's platform. A trip to Porsche's website allows for some quick comparisons between the old and the new. This car now has 400 horsepower against the old S model, which had 385. And the red line is almost 1,000 revs higher, up to 7,400 RPM now. So this year's S is roughly on the same performance level as the old GTS. My test car is equipped with Porsche's 7-speed dual-clutch automated manual, or PDK for short, and I was prepared for it to be absolutely perfect. I was a little bit let down. It's not completely perfect, and there's two things that I would change. First, I would prefer to push on the shift lever, because if you're on track at 140 miles an hour and you're braking, you need everything you can to brace yourself against. You're pushing on the brake pedal, you're pushing on the steering wheel. I don't want to be pulling on the shift lever. I hope that makes sense. Also, no matter what transmission mode you're in, even fully manual, the car will still downshift to second or third gear if you mash the gas all the way to the floor. So you need to master this art of going like 90% to the floor in order to get full throttle acceleration in the higher gear. On the other hand, all my gripes aside, a full throttle upshift in this car is pretty addicting. So take a listen for yourself. Still haven't gotten out a second here. This Carrera is easily one of the most potent cars I've ever driven, probably second only to a 911 GT2 I drove a couple years back. I've driven cars with more horsepower, but this thing only weighs 3,100 pounds. It doesn't feel as fast as things like the M3 and the Boss 302 because it's less brutal, but it is faster. It's been clocked at 3.6 seconds to 60 miles an hour, which is certainly faster than the M3 and the Boss, both of which are about 500 to 600 pounds heavier than this car. And it's definitely louder too, especially with that optional sport exhaust. The 911 is clearly the world's only rear-engine, four-place sports car. And while that allows it to stake out a pretty solitary space in the automotive world, it also has traditionally imbued it with some quirky handling characteristics. I don't really know too much about that because the only 911 I've ever driven aside from this was a 996 GT2 about a decade ago, way before I started doing this for a living. So I took a friend of mine for a ride who had some experience with the older cars and asked him how they compared to this car. He said that although it's clearly much less scary, it still retains two of the most distinctive handling characteristics of the old 911s. The first of which is the front end bobs slightly during corners, which isn't all that surprising considering that all that's up there is that little trunk. The second is, even at low speeds, this car does little four-wheel drifts. And it's so minor, in fact, it's so smooth that you really just can't feel it unless you're really paying attention. And that one I did not notice until he pointed it out. So, what's my final judgment on this new and enlarged 911? First off, let me just say that large is relative. This may be the biggest 911 ever, but it still rides on a 96.5-inch wheelbase, which for comparison is still shorter than a Mini Cooper hardtops. So it may be bigger, but it's not overgrown. Having said that, let me give you a quick rundown on what's great, good, and subpar. Great? Obviously the performance, the sound, adjustable everything, styling inside and out, and terrific gas mileage at 20 miles per gallon city and 27 on the highway. Not to mention the best seats ever, with adjustments to literally wrap them around you. Good, the transmission, the somewhat crowded but still functional and cool looking console. Subpar, the price. My test car starts at around $97,000 and has around 30 grand of optional equipment. But honestly, I cannot call it overpriced. Not with how good it is at almost everything, not with how well Porsches tend to hold up in the long term, and not with how well 911s in particular hold their value. I'm Ross Rapoport. Thanks for watching me today. Please comment on this video and like me on Facebook. I'd love to hear from you. So we decided it would be a good time to do the Ross Rapoport rating and see if this car can top its smaller Cayman sibling with a 4.78 cubic feet trunk. It appears that it does. Oh, no, 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 no!